Good afternoon. It looks like folks are still kind of trickling in. I'm going to start us off at 2 past the hour. This is Lauren Salvato, and welcome. Been working together to leverage their capacities and pull together common strategies that are compatible towards a common goal. And so within the past few years, the states have collectively agreed to focus on building relationship and enhancing cooperative action across the upper Mississippi River Basin scale, beyond their individual state borders, to accelerate nutrient runoff reduction, including through collaborative implementation of conservation practices. So for the next year, we'll be convening among you all, individual entities who work and motivate the use of conservation practices across the landscape for the purposes of extending our network further and accelerating the adoption of multi-benefit conservation practices. This includes evaluating the most effective ways to improve our understanding and communications of multi-benefit conservation practices and increasing awareness of our work already ongoing. When we put this project idea together, we had not known that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act or bipartisan infrastructure law or Inflation Reduction Act were possibilities. Those two legislative measures do not seem to warrant or shift our purpose, but rather confirm and affirm that this conservation at this time is important. So what we can do collectively to utilize funds appropriated for conservation to optimize the use for nutrient reduction beyond for habitat, water storage, and so forth. So on behalf of UMRBA, I want to express my sincere appreciation to EPA Office of Water for funding this project. In addition, because it is a cooperative agreement, EPA staff serve as partners to UMRBA in implementing this project, and we want to express our appreciation to Whitney King at Office of Water, as well as Regions 5 and 7 staff serving the Planning Committee. So for the upcoming workshop, just a plug for that, we will explore information sharing and breakout group settings on technical information of research, financial tools, as well as explore the use of communication and social science work to inform the adoption and implementation of conservation practices with benefits. And then as far as today's pre-workshop webinar, we hope to share information about participants' various roles in conservation practices with multiple benefits. And today's discussion will be around leveraging those multiple lines of funding and partnerships to advance conservation practice adoption. On our very first pre-workshop webinar on September 13th, we heard from Dr. Matt Helmers with Iowa State University about the whole farm conservation best practices manual, and from Dr. Adam Chambers on NRCS Climate Smart Agriculture. So today we'll hear from Illinois Department of Ag, Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection, as well as the Illinois Corn Growers, and our facilitator will lead the discussions following the presentation. So as we did last time, we want to just get you thinking about these discussion questions following our 3 presentations. What would it take to be able to have more projects like these? And what is one thing that you plan to explore and share following this webinar? So keep that in mind. We will have these questions posted for discussion at the end of this. And without further ado, though, I will move things over to Dr. Michael Woods, our first presenter with the Illinois Department of Agriculture.
Thank you so much. If you could give me sharing rights.
Yes, working on that. There you are.
Perfect. And I will share now. I'm assuming my front slide's shared.
Looks good.
All right, perfect. Well, good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to bring you greetings on behalf of Director Jerry Costello and the over 400 Illinois Department of Agriculture employees. As noted, I work for the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and I manage and very fortunate to manage the Division of Natural Resources. In the Division of Natural Resources is home to the Bureau of Environmental Programs, as well as the Bureau of Land and Water Resources. IDOA staff are steadfast in their individual and collective efforts to put in motion the IDOA vision to promote and regulate agriculture in a manner which encourages farming and agribusiness while protecting Illinois consumers and our natural resources. We in the Department of Agriculture recognize that climate change and its related weather patterns and information are more likely than not to affect food security at the global, regional, and local levels. IDOA staff continue to witness how climate change and weather extremes can disrupt food availability, reduce access to food, and affect food quality. For example, projected increases in temperatures, changes in precipitation patterns, changes in extreme weather events, and reduction in water availability may all result in reduced agricultural productivity. Increases in the frequency and severity of extreme weather events can also interrupt food delivery and resulting spikes in food prices after extreme events that are expected to be more frequent in the future. Increasing temperatures can contribute to spoilage and contamination. As such, IDOA serves as a vital partner in our mutual desire to advance, monitor, and implement public policies that create healthy environments across Illinois. It goes without saying, Illinois is a diverse state geographically with a wide range of landforms, climates, and weather patterns, which allows for the production of a large diversity of agricultural crops, animal agriculture, and forest production. Along with these diverse agricultural commodities are a corresponding diverse group of partners, including state and federal agencies, commodity groups, and community organizations. IDOA has a long history of working with these diverse agricultural commodities and state and federal agencies to ensure our mutual stakeholders' needs are met. Our service is guided by our belief that agricultural sustainability rests on the principle that we must meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. To this end, it is important to note that Illinois is a geographically diverse state comprised of approximately 37 million acres, of which farmland covers roughly 27 million acres, over 60% of the state's total land area. Illinois agriculture goes far beyond corn and soybeans. Illinois has a good soil and has a favorable climate, among other factors, making the state a top grower of several specialty crops as well. Notably, Illinois' fertile soils and favorable climate make it uniquely situated to be a major agricultural producer. Yet the conditions Illinois farmers depend on are already changing. Illinois is now experiencing a climate that is already significantly warmer and wetter than at any time in the last 120 years. Further, temperature increases and changing precipitation patterns, wetter winters and springs, drier summers, and longer stretches of dry days between more intense rain events are likely to impact agriculture and increase the challenges farmers face. To showcase IDOA's commitment to mitigating and adapting to our changing climate, we were awarded a Regional Conservation Program grant in 2021 entitled Illinois Climate Smart Agricultural Partnership. Under this initiative, the Division of Natural Resources, Bureau of Land and Water Resources, will establish a Climate Smart Agricultural Champions Program for Illinois producers to incentivize climate smart conservation practices and systems with a greenhouse gas and water quality benefits. Project partners will create an Agricultural Climate Smart Institute to establish educational training programs for climate smart systems and practices, allowing us to leverage existing state dollars with federal resources. The goal of this initiative is to increase the amount of conservation cropping practices installed in Illinois while reducing the amount of sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus loading to the Mississippi River Basin, and also raising awareness of carbon capturing or limiting release of carbon by introducing the Illinois Climate Smart Agricultural Partnership. The objective of the projects are to, first, expand the use of conservation cropping systems in Illinois by leveraging climate smart agricultural practices across the state's diverse watersheds. Second, to formalize the creation of the Illinois Climate Smart Agricultural Partnership. Third, establish educational and training opportunities to advance evidence-based climate smart agricultural practices throughout Illinois. And fourth, unite outreach and marketing initiatives to farmers and industry professionals that strengthen implementation of climate smart agricultural practices. To formalize the creation of the Illinois Climate Smart Agricultural Partnership, we will establish an advisory committee of industry partners to address the rapidly growing competition abroad and Illinois' ability to sustain a high level of agricultural production. This is critical to determine the optimal methods for production agriculture results in the best returns for their farm and best preserves the environment and Illinois farmland. The committee will be comprised of one representative from each partner, which are listed to the right, NRCS and IDOA. Initial partners that signed on for the RCPP application include American Farmland Trust, the Association of Illinois Soil and Water Conservation Districts, Isaac Walton League of America, Illinois Stewardship Alliance, Pheasants Forever, and the Illinois Farm Bureau. Since being awarded, over 20 additional NGOs have also joined the working group that has aided in the framing of initial work plan to aid in outlining the purpose and the scope of the partnership. A foundational effort to this initiative is our desire to establish educational and training opportunities to advance evidence-based climate-smart agricultural practices throughout Illinois. Notably, we wish to establish and unite existing educational and training programs that focus on outcomes that differ by educational levels: industry, secondary, post-secondary, and producers. Through the Climate Smart Institute, the partnership will launch a micro-credentialing competency-based climate smart agricultural education program designed to enable any individual to earn recognition for innovation stackable agricultural climate smart credentialing that would enable education and training providers to offer flexible learning pathways for traditional and the non-traditional learners. The Institute will also expand existing conservation cropping seminars to reach new audiences and unite industry partners' training and educational initiatives to highlight united efforts. Attempting to reliably grow crops profitably in marginal soils or under changing climate can be a challenging proposition, yet changing how one farms can feel like a risky decision. especially when it takes an upfront investment in new equipment and practices without adequate data on cost effectiveness. As such, the final aspect of the Institute will be to produce additional farmer-to-farmer case studies that model climate-smart agricultural practices to share with producers, academic institutions, and legislators. The goal of these case studies is to inspire others to take management risks on their farms that can improve their overall sustainability and resiliency into the future by showcasing producers who have done so successfully. The RCPP was funded at $1,396,590. This breaks down as follows. Land management practices will garner an additional $977,613 as part of our Partners for Conservation initiatives. Technical assistance will be the sum of $349,147 to assist with all kinds of technical assistance for our Soil and Water Conservation District staff. And the remaining $69,830 will be contributed to NRCS implementation technical assistance. As you will note, the bulk of these funds will leverage increased investments into land management practices. The partnerships and subsequent institute serves as a basis for additional funding requests. At present, the initial RCPP has led to other funding projects that support the foundation of the Climate Smart Ag Institute. These include the NLRS Climate Smart Ag Barrier Study funded by the U.S. Climate Alliance. This proposal seeks to close the gap by identifying local barriers to adoption, developing a framework to expand on-farm implementation, and inform policy to support statewide climate-smart agricultural practices. The project aims to produce three primary outcomes: a ranked list of barriers from all SWCDs, a framework tool for assessing local opportunities for expanding practice adoption and setting attainable goals, and finally, educational materials for state-level staff and policymakers to advance climate-smart ag practices in Illinois. We're excited to partner with the University of Illinois Extension's Illini Science Scholars Program. Oluwaseun Ojo joined us recently as a fellow for that initiative, and he's on here today. So we're excited to have him join us and help to lead up this initiative. A new bi-state RCPP partnership was also established to put in motion conservation efforts on the Kankakee watershed that crosses the Indiana and Illinois border. This initiative, led by Jennifer Thum of the Indiana State Department of Agriculture, will bring Indiana, Illinois, and 43 partners to work together and improve the overall health of the iconic Kankakee and Iroquois watersheds. The $7.9 million will be leveraged from partners. The project aims to work with all types of landowners, including forest ground, urban or specialty crops, traditional farmers to municipalities, to install conservation practices and engage in education and outreach efforts, working together across all land uses and communities. This initiative will further efforts of conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of soil, water, and wildlife on the watershed scale, while encouraging partner groups to work with producers to meet or avoid the need for national, state, and local natural resources regulatory requirements. The initiative's goal is to install 3,000 acres of new conservation cover, 2 miles of two-stage ditches, 800 acres of wetland easement, and 25,000 plus conservation practices to achieve nutrient reduction goals. And finally, a recently announced initiative that leveraged $3 million state NLRS funds with federal resources to the sum of $13 million is an outspurt of our initial RCPP proposal and the Climate Smart Institute and Partnership. As you may know, a 2021 Soil and Water Conservation Society poll of 1,715 public and private conservation practitioners found that 90% of respondents reported the lack of conservation practitioners negatively impacts conservation momentum. 78% agreed that a lack of field staff reduces an organization's capacity to get conservation on the ground. The purpose of the recently announced IDOA and NRCS agreement is to allow the NRCS and IDOA to address the conservation staffing capacity challenges and expand nutrient loss reduction strategy efforts in Illinois. increased Conservation Reserve Program technical assistance to Illinois CRP participants, and to increase general conservation planning assistance to Illinois landowners, users, and producers. The project will allow the addition of up to 40 conservation planners across the state of Illinois. The conservation planners will be recruited and supervised by IDOA and hired by a subcontract hiring agent. They will increase capacity to develop new conservation plans and conduct conservation implementation follow-up to improve conservation success. The conservation planners will also support the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Strategy effort, as the latest biennial report indicates an increase in overall nutrients being lost in Illinois streams and rivers. In addition, the new planners will be able to assist with IDOA conservation programs to increase overall producer opportunities to participate in state and federal conservation programs. This initiative is a vital step in addressing the talent pipeline challenges to fulfill essential conservation implementation jobs that will help confront climate and environmental constraints facing our agricultural non-point sector, impacting our nutrient loss reduction strategies in Illinois, and for more stable and continued implementation efforts of best management practices in the years ahead. Thank you for your time and allowing me to share these exciting new ventures underway in Illinois. Ventures that would not be possible without the continued support and engagement of many partners. We have found that these sustained partnerships and collaborations can go a long way in increasing a stronger and better community. In addition to pushing our shared mission forward, these partnerships and collaborations have provided stability, financial and non-financial, while aiding in achieving our shared goals. Thank you so much, and I'm open for any questions.
Thanks so much, Michael. So if you don't mind, we'll hold some questions to the end and keep working through our speakers. And so I'm going to switch over now to Dana Christel. And she is a program manager for Producer-Led Watershed Protection Grants Program at Wisconsin DATCAP. And so Dana, I'm going to make you presenter now and hand it over to you.
That's great. Thanks, Laura. All right. So as Laura said, my name is Dana Christel. I manage the Producer-Led Watershed Protection Grants Program, the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. So that's within our Division of Agricultural Resource Management. That is our Bureau of Land and Water Resources. So today I'm mainly going to talk about 3 of these smaller pilot projects that we worked on with 3 of our producer-led groups in the past couple of years, and just talk about what we've learned with those so far. So just briefly about the producer-led program for those of you who haven't heard of it. It's a state-run grant program we have here in Wisconsin that was started in 2016. And essentially its role is to support non-point source pollution abatement activities through local farmer-driven conservation projects. So we provide grants up to $40,000 per year to groups of farmers that are focused on implementing and promoting conservation practices and conservation systems within a watershed boundary area. So they have the autonomy to kind of decide, design their own conservation incentive programs. They do a ton of education and outreach to other farmers and partners, and then they do a lot of different on-farm demonstration and research projects. So about 2 years ago, we were hearing from a lot of our groups, not a lot of our groups, but several farmers within our groups were having questions about a lot of the carbon market talk and ecosystem services market talks, and kind of related to that, some of these performance-based conservation initiatives. And so we applied for EPA multi-purpose grant funding, which is basically grant funds that are available to states and tribes to accelerate high priority areas, high priority programming that's already within some type of statute. And so obtained a pretty small amount of funding just to get these smaller pilot projects going. So you can see from the map there, that's a map of all of our groups that we had funded since 2016 through the program. But then specifically for these smaller pilot projects, we worked with the Horse Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council up in western Wisconsin, the Dodge County Farmers for Healthy Soil, Healthy Water. They're down in the southeast there. And then we're still a part of that. A part of those funds are also going to the Oak Plain Partnership for Integrated Conservation for sort of a separate project that they have. So the goals of these pilot projects were essentially to organize, again, these smaller scale projects to help farmers explore these ecosystem service markets or these pay for performance conservation program approaches. The goal was to deliver these projects in different regions of the state so that we could cover different landscapes, different soil types, different farming systems, and then different conservation practices within those farming systems. And we really wanted to just gain a little bit of insight at the state level into the feasibility of delivering ecosystem services, performance-based conservation programming. So looking at that from the lens of financial incentives to the farmers, what does that mean in terms of payments that they would be getting, the technical feasibility in terms of how much staff is involved with delivering an approach like this, and then just general stakeholder interest and farmer interest in this type of approach. So I'll just walk through some of the results that we learned from the first two, and then I'll explain the third project as well. So for the Horse Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council, again, that's the group that's up in the northwestern part of the state. This was a pretty small project. In all, I think we looked at under 300 acres, but we worked with 3 farms, and overall 5 fields were evaluated. And for these farms, they were all cash green systems. They were all in some type of long-term reduced till or no-till already. And the practice change that we were modeling or looking at was adding cover crops into their system. So that's kind of a key point to make as I go through this. A lot of the farmers that we were working with were already sort of conservation-minded farmers versus starting from someone kind of earlier on in their conservation continuum. And our main partner with this project was the Polk County Land and Water Conservation Department. So here in Wisconsin, we call them county land conservation departments. So I realize the image on the left there is probably a little bit hard to see, but that's just a snapshot from the final report from this project. But basically we organized this for the farmers so that each field kind of had like a field report to help them understand the outcomes that we looked at and the information that we found from their farm. But just briefly, we used what is called here in Wisconsin, we have this program called SNAP Plus, and it is a nutrient management planning software. But in recent years, we've been using it more and more to model phosphorus reductions and soil erosion reductions in different projects like this. And then we also used Comet Farm to look at soil-based greenhouse gas reductions. And then the farmers were also really interested in actually looking at, what the actual carbon levels were in their soil. And so we followed some guidance from one of the carbon protocols and ended up organizing organic carbon soil sampling. So we set a baseline that would have been 2021. And then, the farmers will have the option to go back in 4 or 5 years to retest their organic carbon soil levels. And then the payment structure that we proposed EPA was $12 per ton for carbon dioxide equivalents, and then $25 a pound for phosphorus. And so just briefly, project data summary. So we actually saw some pretty minimal outcomes from the farms in this project. So the phosphorus reduction ranges were anywhere from 0 to 0.1 pounds per acre per year. For soil erosion, we actually saw on the low end of the outcome actually an increase of 0.1 ton per acre per year to higher end reduction of 0.2 tons per acre per year. And then you can see the greenhouse gas emissions reductions there. So with that information, I just want to show this as reference. We did calculate out what this would actually equate to in terms of a payment to these farmers. And so just drawing your attention to the second from the right column, that's the combined payments if we were to pay them based off that CO2 equivalence payment and the phosphorus payment. That's what they would get paid for those fields. But then I wanted to just compare it to what that particular farmer-led group's incentive program would be. So this group, they offer an incentive program to pay for cover crops at a rate of $20 per acre. And so you can see that's a pretty significant difference in what they would receive from just like a normal cost share program versus this type of approach. So we took it one step farther because we just wanted to explore or kind of demonstrate, the value that these farmers that are already in conservation systems are providing to their communities and to the environment. And so then we did go on to compare, what the impact would be if these farms were to revert to more conventional systems, just back to a corn and soybean system with more intense tillage. And so you can see there, what the impact would be if these farms were to revert to that. So 157 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents would be released, range of 2.5 to almost 6 tons of soil erosion per acre per year. It's across all the fields. And then 0.3 to almost 2 pounds of phosphorus loss per acre per year. So I won't read through all of this, but basically some of the main takeaways is that, with this project, again, we modeled pretty minimal water quality outcomes from adding a cover crop to the system. In some cases, even showed an increase in phosphorus loss or soil erosion adding the cover crop. Within our model that we use here in Wisconsin, the act of actually running a drill through the field to plant a cover crop can actually, the disturbance from that, the model will kind of pick up on. So in some instances, so we found that, but again, making the that on these farms that have been long-term no-till systems, reverting back to a conventional management system would be detrimental. And so a lot of like the ecosystem services markets and potentially some of the pay for performance programs aren't obviously set up that well to the advantage of farmers that are farther in that conservation continuum. So then that brings the question of, can or should some of these markets and programs recognize the impact of some of these farms that have already been in these conservation systems? And then moving on to the Dodge County Farmers for Healthy Soil and Healthy Water project. That one we included another farm, an additional farm. So we had 4 farms and we evaluated 14 fields overall. There was a variety of farming histories, more of a variety than the Horse Creek project, where it was mainly just cash grain and long-term reduced tillage. These had some histories of dairy rotation, cash grain and canning vegetables, a varied history of tillage. And we looked at a variety of different practice changes too. Some converted to the Conservation Reserve Program, or here in Wisconsin, we have Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. We're looking at changes in tillage, rotation diversifications, and then of course, incorporation of cover crops. And to do these evaluations, we partnered with the Dodge County Conservation Office. So we use the same approach as the Horse Creek project for this project. So same tools using SNAP Plus for the phosphorus and erosion, numbers, and then Comet Farm for the soil-based greenhouse gas emissions. We saw a little bit better, or I'd say better, phosphorus reduction outcomes for this project. You can see an average of about 0.5 pound per acre per year. For soil erosion, an average reduction of 0.43 tons per acre per year. And then for the soil-based greenhouse gas emissions reductions, an average of 0.9 tons of CO2 equivalents per acre per year. Again, that's averaged across all of the fields that participated in the pilot. So this might be a little hard for folks to see, but again, just wanted to show kind of a comparison for, what payments these farmers might receive. And so this looked a little better for some of the farms. Again, drawing your attention to the last two columns on the right there. The combined payments would be what the farmer would see for the fields that have been enrolled, for both the carbon payment and the phosphorus payment, same payment structure. And then I compared this to their cover crop incentive program. And they pay $25 an acre with this particular group's program, recognizing that some of these fields, this isn't a fair comparison because they would have enrolled it into CRP or CREP and gotten a different payment. But again, just wanted to have something to compare it to. So in some instances, this would be financially advantageous, and in others, not so much. So main takeaways from this project, we found that the greatest outcomes in terms of phosphorus and soil erosion reductions was the field that had historically bad management. It's a farm that took over a field from a neighbor that it was historically bore plowed and chisel plowed and disked every spring. And so he was converting that into a planting green system. And then other fields that performed well within the models was a field that used to be in a dairy rotation, and now they're converting that whole field to our prep program. So one thing to note, we didn't incorporate dairy farms in this project like we had originally planned. So manure applications are going to play into these projects differently as well as you start adding dairy farms into projects like this. And then another thing that came out of this, just in talking with the county and some of the farmers, that there's a need to really break down some of this project data for farmers to make sense of it, because one of the other main initiatives behind this project, in addition to us kind of figuring out, the feasibility of it, is really just kind of the education and outreach behind it with farmers to help them understand and make sense of some of the opportunities out there too. So, and then this third project I just wanted to touch on briefly, because it's really, this project was developed and organized by the Marathon County Land Conservation Department, and they developed their own kind of project plan, payment structure, and all of that. And they piloted this initially with our Department of Natural Resources multi-discharge variance funds. So they focus these towards a phosphorus impaired watershed, Bill Plain Reservoir watershed. And we became aware of it and knew that they were working in an area where there's also an active group working a lot with their farmer-led group related to this project. And so in 2022, we decided to again apply for those EPA multi-purpose grant funds and just use it to bolster this good project that they already had going. So this is really more so their project, and I'm just including it sort of as perspective for the other ones that I've talked about. Just to go into brief detail on theirs. So they're using mainly SNAP Plus, and they are, again, it's county staff that are working with landowners to collect their baseline crop rotation data to then input that all into the model and model different conservation scenarios. So the way they've set this up is they have 3 different tiers of cost share for this project. So less so, we're going to pay you this amount per pound per phosphorus, or per pound of phosphorus per acre. But more so looking at what we have, it's called the phosphorus index. It's part of the SNAP Plus model. And so the higher the phosphorus index, essentially the higher the phosphorus loss from the field. And so you can see here they've structured it so that, you know, the further down, for the more you can minimize your phosphorus loss from the field, the more you get paid. And then they incorporated both that initial reduction rate and then a maintenance rate beyond that implementation year. And then the column on the right there, it's an example of some of the practices that they've seen in their watershed that gets farms to a PI of less than 1, PI of less than 2, so on. And so, again, this is all their data that I'm just sharing with you all. But one of the big things that they've pushed with this project is just the cost efficiency of this approach. So they've calculated out, I think this was from last year's data, so it might be slightly different now. But they calculated out, you know, with the different acres that they're covering, that the cost efficiency for this approach is just under $18 per pound versus almost $60 per pound in a different approach that they're using, more so towards the common structural practices that we think of with conservation practices like grass waterways and things like that. So that's kind of a summary of that one. So just some closing thoughts on, I guess, lessons that we've taken away from these, again, very small scale pilot projects, but these are staff intensive projects. So it takes a lot of time to work with the farmers to collect and verify their crop rotation data, their fertilizer application data. Again, if you get into animal operations, their manure application data. Luckily, you know, when we went into this, we wanted to work with farmers who already had a SNAP Plus plan, so a nutrient management plan for the last 10 years at least. So a lot of that data was already within that database, and we could kind of just verify that that was all accurate and then model the future scenarios. But that's something to not take lightly. And then I do think that in certain areas, I mean, at least here in Wisconsin, that farmer participation in these types of programs would require a lot of outreach. Again, just to kind of for them to better understand what it is that this approach is trying to accomplish and how it works, the need behind the additional data collection and all that kind of stuff. And then just a question that, you know, we've posed to is, should these existing conservation farms be considered in this approach, and how or to what extent? And then the other piece, being that this is a presentation of different agencies, is something that we've thought about is, you know, the need for better database management for a public program like this. It's a lot of data to collect even on this small scale. And so if as a state agency, you're not set up well to manage that data and actually make sense of it, that can just create some really bad inefficiencies, I think. So with that, looks like I'm here. Oh, okay, that's too far. Apologies. There's my contact information if you have questions about any of the 3 projects, but then I'll also throw in the chat the project specific contacts from each of the counties, because they would have a much better idea of, you know, if there are specific questions about any of the farms or specifics of their particular projects. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks like we're already starting to get some questions in the chat, and it looks like Andrew Craig had some just comments with the Fenwood project. But if we could just hold on addressing those, then we will move on to our final presenter, and then we'll make time for Q&A on the presentations as well as the discussion. So thank you, Dana. And our final presenter, we have Dr. Laura Gentry, who is with the Illinois Corn Growers Association. And let's see, excuse me, I'm trying to multitask and it's not working. So she's with the Illinois Corn Growers and also sits at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, soil health scientist by training is my understanding, but I'll let you add more to your bio. So with that, I'll let you take it away.
Well, thanks a lot, Lauren. If anyone can't hear me, let me know. I think I should sound okay. I sound okay to me.
Sounds great.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot. So so I work for the Illinois Corn Growers Association. I'm a soil scientist. I've been working in the space of conservation in commodity crops like 15 years now. That makes me feel really old to say that, but it's true. And was going to present today a little bit on the Precision Conservation Management Program. And I was, instead of focusing on data, which I enjoy talking about like a lot, and it was really fun to hear Dana's presentation just now, looking at some of their results and things. I was going to step back a little bit and talk about partnerships and some of the lessons that have been learned in this space of doing this for like 7 years now, working with the Precision Conservation Management Program. And hopefully you all can learn from some of our mistakes. It looks like this space of conservation programs and working directly with farmers is only going to grow over the next, any amount of foreseeable time, really. No reason to think we're going to quit growing food, and no reason to think that growing food is going to stop having a footprint on the environment. So as long as those two things remain true, I think we will have plenty of opportunities to be learning and working in this space. And so here are some of the early lessons that we have learned. We know that USDA just awarded 70 of these USDA climate smart commodities projects, proposals, and more of those are going to be made known here in the near future, as we understand it, from that tranche of funding that was for the $250,000 to $5 million. So a lot of money flowing into this space and lots of partnerships that will be underway. So these are the lessons that we have learned in sort of I like to think of us as sort of the early adopters in these partnership programs, and this is what we have learned. Wanted to start out by just giving an overview of what our program is, the Precision Conservation Management Program, why we created the program, what we do, what makes us unique, and what we're offering to farmers. And then just being pretty transparent about what we've done well, why we feel like we've had some critical successes, but also, what are the missteps, the mistakes that we've made? How can you learn from them? And very specifically, we wanted to focus in on partnerships and teams. So when I think of teams, I'm considering our team as our internal group of the folks that make our program, Precision Conservation Management, run. And then our partners are the outside people that our team works with to fund our work and to build on our work and all of the different in-kinds that we have been provided, and really wanted to focus in on how we have benefited from programs like the Regional Conservation Partnership Program proposal or grant opportunities, the Conservation Innovation Grants, and then some of the private partner opportunities out there as well. So Precision Conservation Management, PCM, is a farmer service program. Just first and foremost, that's what we are. We are an effort that was started by the Illinois Corn Growers Association in 2015. And now we're co-led by the Illinois Soybean Association. They're an equal partner in PCM with us. The PCM program was really launched with the receipt of an NRCS Regional Conservation Partnership Program Award in 2015. That's what got us started. And since that time, we've received 2 additional RCPP awards in support of PCM. We also lead an NRCS Conservation Innovation Grant Award, and we were a part of the RCPP Alternative Funding Agreement Award that was received by the Illinois Soybean Association for the Soil and Water Outcomes Fund. We're also one of the named partners in the recently awarded USDA Climate Smart Commodity proposals that was specifically the one that was awarded to Field to Market for $70 million. Along with about a dozen other partners on that. But all of that is focusing on innovative alternative finance mechanisms for conservation adoption and expansion across commodities in the Midwest. So as I mentioned, Precision Conservation Management, we were started with a RCPP in 2015. We were started by the Illinois Corn Growers Association. I was the person who was really in charge of getting that started. We work one-on-one with farmers to help them to understand really the costs and the benefits of adopting new conservation practices. And what we try to do and what we think we do pretty well is we pull all the emotion and the guilt out of adopting conservation practices, and we really try to focus in on the hard-nosed financial implications. What does adopting this new conservation practice mean for you as a farmer and for your farm business and for your farm family? We also use the data from each individual farm. We use it in an aggregated, anonymized way, so no one is personally identifiable, but we use that data to serve, to create really good analysis, we believe, good objective analysis that helps farmers across the Midwest and in some cases broader to demonstrate how conservation practices are affecting both society but also individual farm incomes. So some of the purpose and the goals of the program. First, we want to position our farmers in the program and outside of the program across Illinois and the Midwest to benefit from their positive conservation outcomes. We also want to understand how conservation practices are impacting farm net return. This goes back to that piece of taking out the emotion and just focusing on farm incomes and also the relative environmental benefits of each of these practices in a pretty high resolution sort of way. And then we also want to really move the needle on water quality. That's why we created this program. We also want to prevent agricultural regulation beyond what we have already. We really believe that we can do this more effectively and more efficiently and with a much better attitude if these practices remain voluntary, provided we can get the farmer buy-in and that farmers are scaling the use of these practices. So I mentioned maintaining this as voluntary. This whole program began in response, direct response to the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Strategy, which was released in July of 2015. I saw that Marshall Wilhite was on the call today. It's great to see her. She was such a positive and influential part of releasing the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Strategy here in Illinois. So we have these goals that you can see written down here, a 45% reduction in total nitrogen and total phosphorus losses by 2035 is the final goal there. And our interim goal here in Illinois is a 15% reduction in nitrate nitrogen and a 25% reduction in total P by 2025, which is, we feel, just around the corner, just 3 growing seasons away for us, so 3 chances. And we take this really seriously. This is something that we want to be able to make a sizable, demonstrable difference in addressing these goals. And we are staying abreast of our progress here. Every 2 years, we have a biennial report that comes out and are tracking our progress towards that. So this was a very important part of this, but we have really branched out from this being just a water quality focused program so that we are now looking at soil quality and soil biological, soil diversity, but also now climate issues as well with all the different carbon and ecosystem service market opportunities that farmers are seeing out there. So a little bit more about the adoption of the program and the things that we do specifically. We work one-on-one with farmers. We work in 33 counties in Illinois, and we work in 10 counties in Kentucky and about 3 counties in Nebraska now. We work directly one-on-one with farmers. Every farmer in our program works directly with what we call a precision conservation specialist to help them to look at their specific practices and how they relate back to their farm financials, their efficiencies, and their environmental footprint. We have a data collection platform we created ourselves from the ground up with our partner, Heartland Science and Technology Group. We feel like it serves our needs perfectly. It collects data the way farmers think about data. Nobody enjoys putting data into a farmer service platform. We don't enjoy it. Farmers really don't enjoy it, but at least we have the farmer, we have our technical specialist there who will sit down with the farmer and put the data in for them, or at least help them to do it more efficiently, and just make it less of a headache, and make sure for our purposes that it's high quality data. So our specialists are responsible for being sure that the data is getting in there accurately. And of course, our data collection platform, something that's very important for our farmers, is that it is secure. We have encryption, multiple types of data security in place, so our farmers know that the data is as secure as it possibly can be. And of course, we don't share it in any way but an aggregated type of way. Every farmer in our program receives a report from us. We call it a RAP. It's called a Resource Analysis and Assessment Plan. We deliver those, our specialists deliver those directly to our farmers every year, and in February and March. And it's usually anywhere from 40 to 60 pages long. Our specialists, it's their job to get all that information across to them in somewhere between an hour and 2 hours, sitting down with them in February and March, each one of their farmers. It includes economic cost tables that break down how that farmer is doing based on the operations that they have, the number of tillage passes, their nutrient management decisions, their other conservation type decisions, how they are doing on an acre basis, field by field across their operation. We also, of course, have environmental assessments. For that, we rely on our partner Field to Market and our field print calculator, as well as a carbon assessment tool called the Cool Farm Tool, COOL. It's put out by the Cool Farm Alliance. We also provide, we think this is a very important benefit of the program, local practice comparisons. So within that RAP report, as the specialist sits down with the farmer and shows the farmer how they're doing field by field for each one of the fields that is enrolled in our program, and how they're doing with their 2-pass tillage system, for instance, it lets them also make the comparison of, in an aggregated way, how farmers in their region are doing who are using, say, fewer tillage practices or no-till. And it just lets them see in comparison how farmers right there in their counties are doing when they are implementing more conservation focused practices. And a lot of times that just gives our farmers the confidence to move from a practice they're doing, but maybe thinking on pulling back, maybe on a tillage pass, or maybe thinking about cutting back on their nitrogen application a little bit. They get to see how farmers who are using those actual practices are doing in an average, aggregated kind of way. The farmers in our program do get paid for the first 2 years that they work with us. After the first 2 years, we feel like we're providing enough value back to them in terms of data analysis and other program offerings that they usually stay in our program. We have over a 90% retention in our program, so we feel pretty good about that. But in the first year that they participate with us, we give them $500, and in the second year we give them $250. That's mostly for their time and allowing us to use their data to help other farmers make good decisions on their own farms. We have partners across the supply chain. We work with over 30 partners in the Precision Conservation Management Program, and all of those provide some kind of an actual value back to the farmer, and many of them provide some kind of a direct cost share to the farmer, some kind of a financial assistance to our farmer. So we make those available. We have cover cropping cost share opportunities, several of those. We have reducing tillage cost shares and nitrogen management cost shares. So a lot of opportunities for our farmers to get some financial assistance on their practices. We also, of course, offer networking and educational opportunities. Every specialist puts on at least one program a quarter for the farmers in their regions. So this is what it looks like, just in practice. This is what PCM looks like for the farmers in our program. It's a specialist sitting down, going over a report, trying to take that big binder and condense it down and really highlighting what they know that farmer's conservation interests and business interests really are and how they're aligned to try and make it the most efficient meeting that they possibly can. Working to get some kind of a commitment from the farmer to, change something, what they are interested in doing. Although no farmer in our program is required to change anything at all. They have no requirement at all for doing that, but we do try to help them to see where there might be an opportunity to do something that would be a good conservation decision on their farm. In this particular instance, we're seeing, here, let me turn on my, oh, that's not the one I wanted. Hold on a second here. There we go. This is a Colin Romer, a specialist in the program. And in this instance, he's the specialist sitting down explaining this information. This instance is a little bit different because we have our two farmers here on this side of the table. This is a father and son operation, and they're sitting down with the landowner. PCM only works directly with farmers. The only reason that a landowner does come in, like in this instance, is when the farmers invite them. So in this case, this landowner has a specific interest in wildlife habitat and had taken taken several fields or parts of fields out of production and put in buffers and things to encourage different kinds of, especially waterfowl, to come in, and so that there was better hunting opportunities there, and to support the wildlife there. So these two farmers were sitting down with the landowner and the specialist. So, well, I guess we don't always have a full bar here in the background, and some cookies and things for that the farmers' wives made for us. That's also, I think, kind of unusual in this, but was kind of fun in this instance. So this is what it looks like in the PCM program. And some stats about us. We have between 450 and 500 farmers in the program-wide across all of the states. We have over 450,000 acres in the program. We have over 30 partners that support this effort across the supply chain. We have, of course, state agencies, federal agencies, conservation groups, commodity associations, and of course, corporate, we have consumer packaged good companies like PepsiCo is a partner, processors, and philanthropic organizations like the Walton Family Foundation who are funding us. We've received more than $18 million in federal and private grants and contracts. We work, as I mentioned, with PepsiCo, ADM, Bunge, Cargill. We work with 3 ecosystem service markets: Soil and Water Outcomes Fund, SIBO, and Ecosystem Services Market Consortium. We've received 3 NRCS RCPP awards and a SIG grant along with the National Corn Growers Association. And as I mentioned, we're a partner in the new Field to Market Climate Smart Commodities grant. So we've been working a lot with partners, is what I'm trying to say here. Things that we've done pretty well. We feel like in PCM, the things that we've done pretty well are we've developed this statewide network across 3 different states of conservation specialists, these one-on-one experts who work directly with the farmers to make good decisions that are both good conservation decisions on the landscape, but also good business decisions to support the farmer, to be sure that they're there farming 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We feel like we have done a good job with our partnerships, keeping those communication lines open, making everybody feel cohesive is always a challenge. And then the education and outreach is something we've done well with our analysis and assessment. Certainly room for improvement there, but we feel like we've worked hard at it and have made progress in that area too. Things that have just helped us along the way, critical pieces that we feel like have led to PCM being the success that it is. We feel like we are the right group, the right couple of groups leading this effort. We are led by not-for-profit checkoff organizations. We think that helps us with the Corn Growers and Soybean Association here in Illinois. And then also all of the partners that are working with us is a real value to the program. They all, at this point, are providing real demonstrable, trackable changes. And that is something that the Regional Conservation Partnership Program really helped us with. That's probably the greatest benefit to us that the RCPP had, was they really codified the contributions that those partners made. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. We think that we're guided by the right mission. So any of you that are considering an effort or have a young effort out there, think about your mission. And the thing that I believe has made our mission successful is that has this good blend of it has a public good effort, but it also has a business component for the farmers who are making the changes themselves. So it has that blend of public good and business. And then we think that we're providing the right information to our farmers to give them the confidence to make these changes. And we have learned this by doing focus groups and things prior to this and finding out what kind of information that our farmers felt they didn't have that they needed to make these conservation decisions. When they were on the fence about it, about making a practice change, but they just couldn't bring themselves to do it, what was it they were missing? Usually it was the business decision part of it. So we feel like we do a good job of providing that information to them. I titled this one Mistakes We've Made. I probably could call it Mistakes We're Still Making, but in a lesser magnitude kind of way. We feel like we are always trying to find ways to do better. And we certainly have made mistakes in the past, continue to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're probably not being very effective in other ways. So we think that two of the big things I wanted to focus on for us, something we struggle with, if not weekly, if not daily, then at least weekly, is finding the right balance of meetings. We have a team of people we have to keep together. And then we also have all of the partners who want to work with us, want us to communicate with them and want to communicate back to us. So finding that right balance. And then there's just the thought time. I mean, you have to have some thought time and you have to have some implementation time. And finding the right balance is really critical there. So with our team of people, we have a core team in PCM of 17 people. We have 9 specialists. We have our operations manager, our PCM director, Greg Goodwin, myself, our administrative manager, that's Debbie Malik, and 3 soybean staff who dedicate some portion of their time to helping us. And then we have 1 contract staff person. We are all distributed across 3 states and we have no central headquarters. So as you can imagine, very quickly we can lose the focus on our big goals and our short-term goals if we don't work together to maintain efficiency, to have some oversight of the program and the team. We have to maintain our focus and our continuity and be sure we're all just pulling in the same direction. And it's a challenge and we work on it all the time. Probably the number one best thing that I didn't list on here is making good hires. Yeah, that's probably the number one. Don't hire bad people. But sometimes you just can't know about that until it's too late. The other things that we're doing that we feel like very effective are we have weekly calls every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Our whole team gets together and we talk about what's going to happen that week. And then every Friday afternoon, the admin team gets together and talks about, what's coming down the pipe, what's going to happen, how we can prepare upcoming meetings, etc. We also have bi-weekly touch points between the director or the operations manager and each of our staff people. We have quarterly in-person team meetings, and then we are trying to do better about attending all of, as I mentioned, every one of our specialists has their own team events quarterly, and we're trying to encourage all of our team members to join or to come to those regional events. We try to come as admin staff to those events as well. Sometimes it's just too much, but we sure do try. And we always try to check in and be sure we know how things went. So that's how we hold our core team together. And then the other thing that we try to do, so we try to have more touch bases with our core team and maybe not attend too many meetings, sort of find that right balance of outside partner type meetings. No reason any of you don't understand that there's no lack of water quality or soil health or regenerative ag kind of meetings to attend. So we just try to really be sure that when we attend these meetings, we're making good decisions, that we're, we ask ourselves, what are we getting out of attending this meeting? Is it we're staying abreast of new opportunities that are out there, finding out who new folks are, new players in this space, and making sure that we have a chance to encourage partners, to find new partners, to influence other key players, and further the success of organizations that are, well aligned with the kind of work that we're doing. So we try to be sure that we get the most out of the meetings that we attend. Now, partnerships. We have made plenty of mistakes with partnerships, and anyway, a couple of those are just partnering with groups that don't really fit with our mission and model. Some of them are really great groups. They have a lot to offer, they have deliverables, but they just they just don't align with what we're trying to do. A good example for us, specifically in PCM, is some times that we have really tried to partner with groups that are doing edge of field type of work. I mean, there are some wonderful groups that are out there. Our program focuses on in-field management. And so we just have wanted to support their work. We need to find ways to support their work without tying it directly to commitments within PCM. That's what we have learned through this effort, and trying to do it in the kindest, most respectful way that we can, conscientious way. But there's just finding out which groups really do partner well with you and which ones don't. Managing expectations is really very, very important too, and establishing that right at the very beginning. Don't overpromise, don't overcommit. If you have a good product, people will want to work with you. So just making sure that you are you're telling people what you do, but more importantly, telling them what you don't do. And then just expecting too much out of partners or accepting too little from partners also. And this is a thing that the regional conservation partnership programs really did help a lot with us, was in making sure that we were tracking our partner contributions and keeping them abreast of how other partners are doing. We feel like that's a real value that, that the RCPP, codified and kind of made us do a good job with. They held us accountable, and that, I think, has helped us to hold our partners accountable, and overall it's just been a real win for our program. So finding good partners, and for us, or for me, good just means effective partners, people who help you to meet your end goals. And effective means they meet their commitments and they don't waste time. So these are just kind of my personal philosophical beliefs about partnerships these days. You do not have to be best friends with your partners. You don't have to grill out every weekend. You don't have to agree on everything, but it does mean that you either share the same mission and values, or that you have the same or closely aligned strategic goals. We, for instance, have partners who are just very important innovative financial partners. Some of them have zero interest in conservation, but they have a strong interest in the business side of things and in efficiencies. That's a great partnership. They might not have a strong conservation ethic, but they have a strong business ethic, and we work well together. We want to be sure, obviously, this needs to be said, that they can provide something. It doesn't have to be money, but they can provide some kind of service to your farmers. They provide visibility to your program, and that it's going to benefit your effort. And that it's something that you actually need. If you already have a lot of internal capacity in a certain space, no reason to spend a lot of time spinning your wheels trying to find people who duplicate that same kind of value that you already have. People talk. So if you find out that there's people out there that have a track record of overcommitting and under-delivering, it's okay to say, hey, no thanks, or to partner with them, but just be sure you're not depending on them too strongly. How to be a good partner. Again, kind of the same criteria. Good means that you are an effective partner, and effective means that you're meeting your commitments and you don't waste time. So my 2 rules here are, number 1, commit. Be very clear about what you're going to do. And number 2, don't overcommit. So for committing, just designing commitments that serve multiple purposes. Something that, can benefit multiple partners, can benefit multiple clients within your program, is a good way to get as much value out of a commitment as you possibly can. Some of these commitments that we're making, especially for like these 5-year grants, you might not have to meet your commitment for 3-4 years. You need to think about that and get it on your calendar. That is actually really an important thing that I've learned. I started this in 2015. It's now 2022. In 2015, I was not really prepared for some of the things that were going to have to be done 4 years later. So I wish that I had thought that far out. And sometimes we asked our partners, you know, they might not actually deliver on their commitment for 3 years from the time that they're signing on to it. But being prepared to do that, knowing when you're going to do that task and who's going to do it is pretty important. And about overcommitting, if you are a good partner, then the people who are leading those efforts are going to come to you and ask you to do more and do more and do more because you're a good partner. And they probably have other partners who aren't as good. So they're going to go to their good partners, their effective partners, to get more and more work out of you. Once you've made your commitment, don't overcommit again and again, because overcommitting is one of the fastest ways to just overextend yourself and go from being a good partner to not such a good partner. To go from being a good partner to a great partner, in my mind, that means sharing. One great way is sharing ideas that bring a lot of value. And I see this again and again, people who just hoard their ideas and think somehow, you know, they're going to find the time, or somehow they're going to become the right agency to do this particular thing that they're never going to find the time or become the right group to actually execute on. Share your ideas, and even better, if you can help groups to execute those ideas. That's how we move everybody ahead. And I think that's really what I wanted to share with everybody today. Some of just the lessons learned, and some of the school of hard knocks we've been through. And with that, I will stop and turn it back over to Lauren. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really great to hear all these lessons learned. Before we talk questions, I just want to introduce our facilitator. If you haven't met him from the last, Phil Singh is president of DJ Case and has over 30 years of experience in facilitation, conflict resolution, and project management across a variety of stakeholders and groups. So with that, I will turn it over to Phil to kind of facilitate the discussion, questions, and Q&A from the three presenters.
Thanks very much, Lauren. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to these presentations are just so great, and it reminded me again to thank all of you who are in the trenches, you know, working in this whole nutrient reduction arena. I was just reading an article the other day about the algal blooms in Western Lake Erie, which is a place where I really like to go fishing. I know it's a different watershed and everything, but the game is the same. So I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing just every day to help address these problems that we have. Thanks also to the speakers for finishing on or under time. We have plenty of time for Q&A and discussion, so really appreciate that. And I'd like to start with the Q&A part. We had several threads going in the chat, and I think several of them got resolved. So I guess I'm going to ask folks, if you had a question or an issue that you had put in the chat that was not resolved, if you could just raise it again, just so that we can be sure. But I do want to, before we go to discussion questions that are on the screen, I do want to make sure we have time for Q&A. I know there's a lot of really good information there from our speakers. So if anyone has a question of clarification for anything that was said in the presentations, please offer it now. Surely there's something. I know, Olivia, you had a comment in the chat during Dana's presentation about, in addition to outreach, I wonder about social science, understand the values and incentives to more effectively scale. Was that about the presentation, or was that part of one of those side conversations? Do you mind?
It was just an extension of the presentation as well, right? Sometimes we talk about outreach or financial incentives, but perhaps sort of social science work could get at sort of the prioritization of values that might sort of help accelerate adoption. I know that's been happening a lot in this sector, but I don't know specifically with these programs. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I might add a couple things in there. I'm so pleased that you brought that forward, Olivia. I personally think that this is a vital untapped aspect of many of our efforts. I believe we need to start looking at the social scientists and some of the aspects of a behavioral change shifts. We know that it takes more than a single field day to shift behavior, right? It's going to take a lot more efforts, much like what's happening in Wisconsin with the producer-led initiatives. But I think that the more we can do to focus and bring in our social science colleagues, the better off we'll be. I'll tell you, here in Illinois, Dr. Anna Marshall has been contributing to our NLRS efforts for many years and really documenting some of the outreach efforts and so forth. But one of the things she and I have been having a lot of deeper discussions on is how do we tackle the issue of the social science and what can we do with that? So, for example, our one study that's funded by the U.S. Climate Alliance is really looking at that. What are the behaviors and the concerns and the barriers to implementing them, right? And we may have anecdotal evidence that says financial constraints are always the issue, or that tools, equipment are needed, or I don't have time to get in there. But what about the behavioral and the social aspects of why we don't implement these behaviors and best management practices? And that's something I think we need to get a deeper discussion at.
Thanks very much. Great. Okay, we got some stuff rolling back into the chat. Laura, for you, what's the modeling tool you're using to determine N&P loss reductions?
Yeah, I saw that. Hi, Bartlett. So what we do when we're estimating this is we use the same method that was used by the science assessment team of the Illinois nutrient loss reduction strategy. So we use the same assumptions and everything that they had, and we just apply it across the acres that implemented we also use the same practice distinctions. The same nitrogen loss practices. We apply the reduction potential that that the science assessment team used. We do that for all the different practices for nitrogen and phosphorus. So we essentially just replicate the science assessment team of the Illinois nutrient loss reduction strategy that was led by Dr. Mark David back in 2015.
Thank you for that. And another one for you. Can you comment on the relationship that PCM and farmers have with government agencies and conservation districts?
Yes, yeah. Thanks for asking that question. So we, as part of the RCPP that gave us a lot of opportunities to work more with the NRCS offices across the state, specifically in those regions that were included in our RCPP. And we set up, as the RCPP provides for, it gives us the pool of money. For us, that was $5.35 million in 2 times, because one was the original and then we also got that renewed. And then that allowed us to set up our own ranking criteria to help to identify the practices that we wanted to promote within our program, within PCM, which we do. And when we identify farmers who are interested in making the changes that are aligned with those ranking criteria, we suggest to them that they might want to go into the the NRCS office and apply to that pool of dollars for either EQIP or CSP. Now it's just a pool of dollars. It's neither EQIP nor CSP in the 2018 Farm Bill dollars. And sometimes, depending on the NRCS office and how comfortable they are, the relationship that we have with them, sometimes they will let us do a little bit more, like they will let us take a form out to the farmer to do like sort of the initial, I forget the name of the form, but just to say, hey, I'm interested in participating in this program, and we'll take it back to the NRCS office for them, that kind of thing. Right now, also, I should mention our conservation specialists are hired on through the Soil and Water Conservation District offices. So we have a very close relationship with Soil and Water Conservation District offices. They are actually staff. Our PCM specialists are staff of Soil and Water Conservation District offices. And so that's been, for the most part, a really good relationship, and allows us to work pretty closely with those staff. And to support those staff, we also provide some overhead to those offices for the space that we take up, essentially, and of course NRCS, and for the additional administrative work of overseeing our payroll and benefits, which they provide, and NRCS grants us the office space.
Thank you for that. I believe the next one for you also. How does Illinois Department of Ag define the climate smart practices that will be supported under the program? In other words, which practices will be prioritized?
Oh, I bet that's for Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I'm more than glad to kind of take that on. So with this, the Illinois Climate Smart Conservation Practices influence basically focus on improving water quality, increased soil health, and capturing limited release of carbon. And those practices include cover crops, no-till and strip-till planting systems, conservation cover, pollinators, critical area planting, saturated buffers, and denitrifying bioreactors. That's under our initial RCPP funding.
Okay. Thank you. Has PCM tallied the additional BMP outcomes resulting from their efforts?
Yeah, and you did not miss that, Dave. I didn't mention that. I usually do, but I was afraid I was pushing my time limit. So every year we do tally those up, and in most years, and I'd say in the past 3 years, each year we have somewhere around between about 585,000 to around 615,000 pounds of nitrate nitrogen loss reductions that we can quantify within our program. Anywhere from 80 to 90,000 pounds of phosphorus loss reductions for our farmers, and anywhere from 115 to 130,000 tons of sediment loss reductions per year is a pretty good range of what we can quantify just for the farmers within our program. We feel like our actual footprint is larger than that because we have a lot of farmers that we can influence to make these decisions who are outside of the program, which of course we want. That's one of our benefits, but we can't track those as well.
Very good. Thank you. Andrew has a comment about social science evaluations and why they're difficult. Andrew, I don't know if there's a question there or you're just offering that as a comment.
It was just a comment, and there was some follow-up from others on that point on social science. But I did have a comment on our question about the other two projects besides Wisconsin discussed today. Are they watershed focused? Are they geographically focused by watershed, or is it just kind of like a shotgun approach? You just whoever participates.
Okay, I'll take that one. So we thought about doing this as a watershed, like actually defining it by watersheds. And it didn't work as well as just defining it by counties. But it is watershed focused. That doesn't mean it's not watershed focused. But when we talk about, which region are you in, we define our regions by counties. I mean, you know exactly what county you're in. And that was just easier for us. But when we are deciding when we want to move to a new region, so every region is, between 4 and 6 counties. And when we decide on where to place a new region, we very much weigh in to that decision the watershed, local resource concerns within a watershed. Does that answer the question? And I can give an example of that. When we went from our original 3 regions to open up, when we expanded, we doubled last year with the help of the Illinois Soybean Association. And when we were deciding which regions to expand into, one of our, the water quality decision was important. And the Rock River in northwestern Illinois is an area that has had elevated nitrogen, like really elevated nitrate nitrogen losses in the past 2 NLRS assessments that have come out. So we made sure that we placed one of our regions in that upper Rock River watershed area.
I can add a little bit to that from the standpoint of the Illinois project. So much like what Laura noted, it's challenging at times to look at a watershed on some of our state level initiatives. And so when we look at our initial RCPP, we are really based on the state and sort of that shotgun approach of hoping that we can hit as many people across the state as possible, simply because our SWCDs are within, the 97 of we're in all 102 counties, but there are 97 districts. And so working on that county level is easier for that staffing, but that doesn't mean they don't align with watershed initiatives and watershed partnerships. But we definitely focus there. on our Kankakee River Initiative, our Kankakee Watershed Initiative, in partnership with Indiana, that is definitely driven on a watershed basis on that particular funded project. Our additional projects that we're looking at adding on, they are across the state, looking at both watershed and looking at county level initiatives. So a little bit of both in all of our efforts. We see value. There's a lot of people pushing us to think simply watershed, but being a state entity, we also have to look across the state. And then if you don't mind, I would like to circle back around. I agree with several of the discussions in the chat about there are some social science resources. They're quite a bit out there. People have been looking into the social science aspects. My only concern or observation, I should say, is that I'm not sure we can generalize all of our social science aspects. Illinois, just looking at Illinois, it is extremely diverse and different from the north to south to the west to the east. And we're also diverse within our farmer basis. Different farms have different needs. So some social aspects may not automatically transcend, across even state lines or even county lines, and it may be variable. So things that happen in Indiana, geopolitics may play into the role of the social science behavior, right? Because they're going to listen to maybe certain political mantras, and that may influence their decision. And then you come to a different state where you have a different political ideology and different county with a different political ideology, you may have different social science behavior. So I'm concerned that we would generalize anything, which we almost have to in a way, but I also think we need to look at a little bit closer level of what social sciences actually say and how do we drive it in context of contemporary times. When we start talking climate to a lot of our producers, they shut off because they've been told that there's no such thing, they've been identified. But you go to certain counties in the state of Illinois, it's not the same. We have northwestern counties that have a different political ideology than our south central counties or our northeastern counties. So we have to take into consideration that one size fits all is not the best approach when it comes to even our social science approach.
Thanks for that. And as a president of a company who does a lot of social science research, I couldn't agree more. And it's always the trying to do that tightrope act, that balance between, if you have social science, of course you want to use it, but being careful not to use it inappropriately, right? And where do you draw those lines, and how much do you have to know before it's enough, and all those things. It's a difficult area, but certainly an area of growing interest in lots of different sectors. And it's great to see that there are researchers out there digging directly into it. So thanks for those comments. Are there any other, I know there's several comments on the social science aspects. Anything that anyone offered there that you'd like to expound on here? Okay, any other questions for our speakers before we get into the discussion questions? Okay, well, let's shift to the discussion questions. We'd just like to get your take on, maybe, I don't know if our speakers are willing to take a first shot at, since you're doing this kind of work, what would it take to do more? And then we'll go into the folks on the call, participants, if you wouldn't mind just offering your opinions about, this is discussion time, right? It's not right or wrong, just what do you think it's going to take to do more projects like these? If speakers want to take a shot?
I'll jump in and kickstart. Laura, I'll let you follow unless you have some initial thoughts. I think a lot of it is the collaboration is going to be essential for us to move forward with a lot of these initiatives. It's coming together and not competing against each other, but really trying to navigate how we work together. And so when you start looking at the significant amount of federal funds that are going to start flowing, whether it be from the infrastructure, our Inflation Reduction Act, or even just eventually the Farm Bill, we're going to have to find ways to come together. And I think a lot of our initiatives are showcasing that. We're transcending not only agencies and state government to the NGOs, we also need to transcend state borders. And so I can tell you that with our Kankakee Iroquois Watershed Initiative, RCPP, one of the things the most exciting out of that is that we have 2 states and over 43 partners coming together. That's what's going to really make a shift. And I think that that's what's going to make sure that there are more projects like this. I think that more funds will flow with greater partnerships, and all partners then will benefit rather than all of us putting together proposals and competing against each other. How do we find a way to come together and strategize the best efforts forward? So I think that's a key part of getting more projects like these.
Thank you. Laura, you're teed up.
That was pretty well what I was going to say. Probably better said. Just this idea of trying to eliminate the competition, the competitive aspect of it, find out what each group can do most effectively, and support and encourage them to do it to the best of their ability, and encourage everyone to work together is the best thing for all of us. The competitive piece of it just wastes energy, time, and effort, and knowing what each group does most effectively and letting them do it, and then building off of everybody's strengths. Just playing to everybody's strengths, I think, is the one thing that comes to mind best for me. How to do that in practice, I'll open that up to let other people discuss and give examples of, but I think that is one of the keys.
I might add on to that, if you don't mind, I apologize. We have so many initiatives and cost share programs right now. It's bewildering to all of our producers. Where do I start? How do I get it? And we've got to help come together to streamline them and showcase stackability, and make it easy. Right now, it's overwhelming because there's just a new program. And it's like, how do they work together? How do we support that? We've got to, the KISS concept, keep it simple, stupid, for our engaged producers that want to do things, but they just don't know how to navigate the overwhelming concepts. So we need to streamline. I think we need a database and one-stop shop place that lists all the programs in our respective states. And some of our producers may produce across state lines, right? They may be living in Indiana and farming in Illinois, or vice versa, because we're right on that border, or in Iowa. Iowa's a little bit harder because the Mississippi divides that a lot more, but we do have some of that. And so we've just got to work together to help make things easier for the end user. And right now it's a bit cumbersome and confusing.
Dana, do you have thoughts you want to offer?
Yeah, I'll just add to what's been said and kind of reiterate, I guess, what I mentioned on my closing slides. But I think at the state level, at least if we're to expand any of the smaller pilot type stuff that I presented on today, I think just a more evolved approach to the way, we're collecting data and funneling that into models, and then managing all of that data, I think is a big need. And then definitely not discounting the value and need for local boots on the ground partners who know the farmers in their locality, know the systems, and know the practices that to introduce into those systems to feed into these different approaches. And then I think too, just generally with any type of programming, conservation programming, setting it up such that it's going from not just implementing a practice for 1 year, but truly taking it into adoption into a system, to get the best bang for the buck.
Thank you. Okay, participants, what do you think? What would it take to have more projects like these? Or maybe related to that, what are barriers that keep you from doing more? Maybe you know what it takes, you just can't because of something. Any comments or discussion, either of those directions? Just blurt it out.
This is Andrew Crick from Wisconsin DNR. A comment I have, or question for the group, particularly in Illinois state. General Mills has been adopting a sustainability initiative to achieve greater nutrient reductions through their supply chains and marketing their products that way. Is Illinois Department of Ag or the PCM working in line with those partners of General Mills to achieve those goals?
My system cut out a little bit. Could you repeat this, the latter part of that question? You just sort of, it cut out for me.
Yeah, is Illinois Department of Ag or PCM collaborating with General Mills to achieve some of their sustainability initiatives with their products and supply chains?
At present, we're not, but that doesn't mean we're not, we're trying to look at different ways of, partnering more with our private industry. But at present, we have not been. I know there are others that have been, and maybe Laura and some of the other groups have maybe.
Mhm. We are not working directly with General Mills. And I don't know any group in Illinois that's working directly with General Mills. I know they are, one of the most supportive groups, the ones who are putting the most funding towards this in other parts of the country. But we are not in PCM, and I don't know any other of the conservation groups in Illinois similar to us that are working directly with General Mills. In our area, it's more PepsiCo that is very involved. ADM has efforts that are going on, and then a lot of other groups have their own have other practices that they're working on. McDonald's is one group that's pretty active, and I hear a lot about that we are not working directly with. Kellogg's, Nestle, but General Mills, yeah, it's interesting. We have not. I do not know anyone in Illinois that's working directly with them.
Thanks, Laura, for trying to answer the question. You mentioned some other corporate entities, and they have sustainability initiatives as well. Those I see as our key partners to the topic that we're discussing today. So I thought I'd bring that up. Not just General Mills, but there may be others as well.
So Ariel, I see you responded in the chat. You want to expound on that for everyone?
Sure. Hi, Ariel Kagan. I'm the Director of Agriculture Strategy at Environmental Initiative, which administers the Midwest Row Crop Collaborative, which is a collaborative made up of many of the companies just mentioned, including PepsiCo, Kellogg, Unilever, Walmart, Cargill, and a few others that are just as important, but I just won't pull them out of my head right now. And you can find more on our website. But what we do as a collaborative is work with companies to implement their sustainability programs on the landscape in the Midwest, working with partners like PCM, which hopefully, Laura, you would say that we are a good partner. I appreciated those comments. And it's really about figuring out how to pilot and then scale these projects that meet both the needs of the farmers and the ecosystems that they're existing in, as well as the commitments that these companies have made to climate, but also to nature and other targets around rural communities and biodiversity. So we're doing a lot. We have goals of affecting or having projects on 30 million acres by 2030 and are working towards that. And I'm happy to answer any other specific questions, but we do have a lot of information on our website, and a lot of what's been talked about today is highly relevant to how we do work as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ariel. That's really helpful follow-up. Appreciate you jumping in there. And she put her info in the chat, so check that out. And Steve has some knowledge about General Mills in Kansas. You want to expound on that?
Yeah, sure. So I know their non-point source program has been engaged when the General Mills folks wanted to move kind of from the northern oats section of the country down into wheat country. They started looking around. Kansas was an obvious choice, and they ended up reaching out to the non-point source program because they have really been heavily, I guess, invested in regenerative ag and soil health practices. So I know they're not really part of this Upper Mississippi River Basin initiative, but certainly I have contact info for folks there. They're doing things like using SRF funds to buy interseeders, and then basically contract with local co-ops to use the interseeders to for free, basically in exchange for a commitment to implement, several between 5 and 10,000 acres worth of row crops, cover crop plantings every year. So the idea is that the co-ops then can start to build the soil health infrastructure component into their business without having to really invest in that. And then once they've built a market, then after the grant period of 3 or whatever years is up, they have a built-in clientele. They can then purchase the interseeders. And so the idea is using, a small business approach to getting our conservation practices implemented. And so they buy the interseeders at a reduced rate, basically, as they depreciate, and then the state turns around, uses that money plus additional SRF money to buy more of these kinds of implements and continues down the road. It's been extremely successful. And they've done RCPP projects as well that basically require, soil health practices to be implemented before they can, as a part of getting a greater, access to greater conservation funds and some other things. So they've been pretty aggressive.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your comments there. Jenny adds a comment about how her opinion is getting more professionals on the ground is a key to expanding project adoption. Any other thoughts on what it's going to take to do more projects like these?
Couldn't agree more. We are just seeing this area grow and expand and way beyond the workforce that's available to us. We have lost 2 of our specialists within the last 2 months, and it's because this space is growing and expanding so quickly, and we know that that's going to happen, but the ultimate need is just more people, more boots on the ground. I think what Michael Woods was describing about just supporting a greater workforce. He has a lot of great ideas around how we can grow it here in Illinois. Hope other states are thinking along those same lines.
Yeah, I sort of believe this is one of those 80-20 rule issues that, 80% of our outcomes or outputs will be driven by the 20% of our sort of all causes and significantly from our staffing. And I think this has been an overlooked part of our initiatives. We've been gearing up all these amazing best management practices, yet we haven't simultaneously been building up the pipeline. We've got to change the discussion with our future generation, the young kids that are in high school now, so that they start thinking about conservation careers or climate smart careers, however we want to tag that. And I think we've got to start looking at the voids that are taking place. I can just tell you in the state of Illinois, for example, we have over 35,000 FFA members. And every year we graduate many of those kids, and significant amount of them do not go on to 4-year universities or even to a community college. And so many of them are left behind in our communities, and we're not building a pipeline with these valuable and vibrant young people that we've been making a connection to the ag industry. We've just dropped them, and then they go get jobs maybe at a gas station or maybe with an FS or something. But we need to figure out a way to continue to build them into our pipeline. And so there's got to be more efforts there. We also have a significant amount of community college graduates that graduate with an Associates of Applied Science ready to go right out into the workforce. And they're not going to go on to that 4-year degree. I think they're another low-hanging fruit group that we could be building a connection with to think about how we can fill these voids in our staffing. And so we need to develop that. And then we need to develop a pipeline that allows us to transition from, high school, elementary school, all the way through to, into our career. We have a shortfall pending, and we're not the only industry, right? A lot of other industries, but we've got to do a better job. And I also think we need to change the dialogue and the discussion around conservation at a younger level so that we are not growing future agriculturalists that believe agriculture is on one side of the spectrum and on the other side is environmental conservation. Rather, we've got to show that everything is together in the middle and that we need a collective effort and we need strong members ready to take on these mantle of challenges that we face.
Thanks for those comments. That's, yeah, a hugely important and timely topic, of no doubt, across many sectors. Thanks for those comments. Suzanne, your comment, you say you're curious about private sector led versus public sector. Is there something specific? What are you curious about it? And what kind of discussion?
Sure. I mean, as someone who works for a state agency, you hear that there's often not the highest level of trust or confidence in what comes from state agencies. And I'm wondering if some of the appeal of PCM is that it's led by these commodity groups, even though a lot of the work is being done at the local level by conservation district staff. And we have some similar programs in Minnesota, but I don't think we have anything quite as extensive as the PCM. And I think it's worth exploring with some of the larger commodity organizations.
Does anybody know of any data, social science data, even if it's anecdotal, about the differences? Why one versus another? People's perceptions of either?
Well, I referenced Dr. Prokop's work that was presented. I can't even remember what the webinar was. Like Laura said, there's a great bunch of them to choose from that you can attend. Hi, Laura, by the way. Anyway, but one of the graphics we thought was quite interesting was kind of what their research, which I believe was multi-state, found as kind of the level of trust. Who are the most trusted information sources? And at the top are things like family and CCAs and your seed and chemical salespeople. And at the bottom are all of us government agencies. And in between they're other groups. So, from that we conclude that we need to find other organizations that will be the face of providing information, the face of working with producers directly. So it's just kind of confirms what we thought all along. We all carry this unfortunate label on our foreheads. So whether we're at the county level, the county didn't get too much higher than a state environmental agency. So I thought that was really useful information.
Thank you for that. Any final thoughts on what it would take to have more projects like these? I want to spend a little bit of time on the last question before we wrap up.
Well, I'd like to bring up just one more piece that Dana brought up twice, I heard, and I think it's really important. We haven't talked very much about it, but the idea of, where do early adopters fit into all of this? And there needs to be a place for them. I mean, currently there's this perverse incentive that excludes them from a lot of the carbon markets, and understandably, understand the reason for that, but there does need to be some place and some recognition, some acknowledgement of the work that they have done, the sacrifices they've made, of them just blazing the trails out there. And I just wonder if anybody else has thoughts around what that might look like and how somebody might be out there representing them more effectively or rewarding their efforts.
You make a great point, Laura. I know we've been talking about that a little bit here and how we maybe provide some incentives to repeat producers that provide practice, rather increase those repeat things, or practice production and implementation. I know this is also a topic that Dr. Marshall and I have been looking at specifically, because I also have some reservations as a social scientist and have dug into sort of the diffusion of innovation concepts for many years. I'm concerned that, our new innovators just a few years ago were considered laggards, right? And so the way that we engage this new crop that we call innovative is got to be different than what we would have described as an innovator 10, 20 years ago when we were looking at other technology innovations, right? So we've got to figure out how we best engage the different levels. And so our laggards now were innovators just a few years ago and celebrated as technologically driven innovators. And now we're telling them, oh, wait a minute, you're lagging behind, and so we've got to figure out a way that we engage them, not in an innovative laggard mindset, maybe, but maybe in this context of where they're coming from, right? That it's going to be different the way we communicate, the way we reach to them, and who they trust. Who, as noted prior, the people that we trust, and some people will trust government more because they see it as a neutral party. But if they're on certain ideological, they may say, "Oh, everybody's been telling me government's bad," right? So we have to figure out how we navigate that. And that's going to be the challenge, because I think any social science research we find right now may not be generalizable even within the next 5 years, because it's going to shift constantly with behavioral influences.
Yeah, the landscape certainly is shifting. And I love Suzanne's comment, the last one in the chat, about level of trust inversely proportional to the degree to which agency is regulatory. And my direct experience is on the fish and wildlife side, but all the data totally supports that notion that the government agencies have a high degree of trust and appreciation, even support from the public, right up into the point where they become regulatory, and then it's a mixed bag depending on where you sit in the target audience area. So great comment there. Let me just shift quickly. Yep, go ahead. Did you have?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Olivia Lydia. I'm with the
Yeah.
Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. I was just going to sort of, working on climate change, and that's my interest sort of for our program being here. But, the landscape's shifting, and I would say there are some things in the behavioral sciences that are consistent in terms of sort of who are trusted resources within communities as being messengers. And so that leads to using case studies like some of you all are. Rewarding and acknowledging, so like creating awards and sort of building up the respect of those folks in the community. And then using the way we structure both regulatory and non-regulatory programs, you can encourage opt out or opt in, like how it's structured really determines how people respond. And so I realize there's some nuances, but I know at least in our climate change work, we've implemented some strategies. And, as we all recognize, like public perception on climate change has shifted. That's not necessarily just due to disasters, but there's been a lot of work in the background for decades.
Very good. Agreed. A couple people give me a takeaway. What's one thing that you got out of this webinar that you're either going to dig deeper into or share with someone else when you leave this virtual space? Nothing. Oh, good. Surely there's something. Hard to pick just one. Well, that's good. Anybody willing to take a shot to tie a bow on this webinar?
Oh, yeah, this is Suzanne Reese again. I'll make one comment, which is that the sort of farmer-led council concept, like what's happening in Wisconsin, there was a report that came out in Minnesota a few years ago that was like the one thing that all the participants could agree on. And there was some legislation passed to enable that, but it was never actually funded. So I still think it's worth exploring. But understanding how much work it takes to actually get all the data in and get some results out of those efforts is something to think about.
Thanks very much, and thanks for being willing to jump in there to tie us up. I'm going to kick back to Lauren to give us final thoughts and prep up for the workshop in November. Lauren, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Aaron, can you advance my slide, please? Okay, so just a couple of plugs for our workshop coming up next month, about a month away now. So we were able to organize a networking event, and I'm going to send out some more details via email, but I just want to let you all know we'll have more of that informal conversation that we can have after day one of the workshop starting on November 9th. So just want to let you know that has been planned. Next slide, Aaron. And then we will post this in the chat, but in advance, we've done this on other meetings, and it was really fun to get to know folks in advance. And that's a virtual business card that you can fill out on the following link and kind of just get a better sense of who's going and there's just some fun facts about them. So we'll have that for you. So please do fill that out before you get to St. Louis. And then last one. Next slide, please. Yep. And then I just want to thank our planning committee. They've been instrumental in guiding this workshop and what's important and kind of delivering what we do have lined up here today. And so there were so many moments in today's discussion where I kept thinking, oh, we're going to talk about the workshop. Oh, we're going to talk about the workshop. So I just think that this has been a really wonderful precursor, and it's just really nice to see all the various groups here together. And I believe I have one more slide left, Erin. So here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. But other than that, I think we can close out. I'll be sending some more emails with final details as we approach the workshop. But hope you're as excited as I am. I think this has already just been a really wonderful conversation and really great to have you all at the table. So with that, yeah, I will close it off. Thanks, Phil, for your facilitation, and thanks to our presenters, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Good evening.